Hello, beautiful moms and entrepreneurs. My name is Charisse Walker, and I'm your host of the Unbreakable Mompreneurs podcast. This is a place where we come together to learn, grow, and inspire. So sit back, relax, and let's get started. Hello, Unbreakable Mompreneurs. My name is Charisse Walker, your host, and today I'm here with Nicole Poulton. And Nicole has an incredible story from her childhood and things to where she is today. So we're going to touch on that because I feel like it's important for you to know her background on how she came to where she is today. But the good thing is that how resilient she is and how she's here to help people overcome their tragedies or vices. And so, Nicole, why don't you introduce yourself?
Yeah, for those of you who don't know me, I am so grateful to be here. I think that sharing my story is the best way I can give back and create an impact. So a little bit about me. I was sexually abused for most of my adolescence. My first couple memories, as a 4-year-old are being abused. And so I say that it kind of started from the get-go, all the way up until I was 15. When I was 15, I broke my back. I was really numb emotionally. And so anything I could do to kind of feel that thrill of life, I would. And so I loved skiing and I didn't have any caution at all. And I went off of a jump that I had no business being on and did not land it. Surprise. And I broke my back. And then that stopped all the sexual abuse. So that was like one of the best gifts that I could have ever asked for. But it gave me access to a ton of prescription pain medication. And so that really kickstarted a 6-year drug addiction. Having those opioids being prescribed to me, I didn't really see that there was a problem with it. And even after my back had healed, I kept using these medications to numb that emotional pain. And I didn't know this at the time. It came, years later did I realize what I was actually doing. But ultimately, when I was 21, I overdosed. I mixed alcohol with these pills, and it was a recipe for disaster. But it was the biggest wake-up call. It was on my birthday, and it was the best birthday present I could have ever asked for because it really gave me that jump start to change my life. And I realized that I didn't have to sit in reaction mode anymore. I could be the creator and design my life. And I just have to, anticipate what I wanted to actually happen. So I got sober. That was back in 2018 in January. And ever since then, I have been focusing on learning as much as I can about sobriety and human psychology and habits. And along my journey, I have realized that there are some tips and tricks that I have learned that have helped me in my sobriety to not have to struggle every day. And so now it's my mission to share those things with everybody, as many people as I can, and help condense time for other people. Because I know that in today's age, like, addiction does not discriminate. It is everywhere. And, from a working mom to people on the street, it is everywhere. And so I just want to share my story and help impact people to realize that you can actually have the life that you want.
Yeah. And I love that. And I think addiction, to go even one step further, because you said that you didn't know that you were addicted. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, and if you don't want to answer this, it's okay. But
I'm an open book.
How many pills were you taking a day? Do you remember?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So just to pre-frame you guys that are listening, if you are not familiar with prescription medication, mm-hmm. at least the opioids, mm-hmm. typically after a surgery, they say take 1 to 2 pills every 6 to 8 hours. Mm-hmm. I was taking at least 1 pill every 2 hours. On average, I was taking between 12 and 18 pills a day. And then when I was like in my party crazy phase, it got up to my max was 32 pills in a day. Wow. And I was getting prescribed 200 pills every 2 weeks with an unlimited refill for 6 years. So I felt like there was no end in sight. I can just get these pills however, whenever I wanted. It was insane.
I cannot believe that he was prescribing you. Like, shame on the doctor, first of all.
I
Like, that
know,
doctor,
right?
like, you've had some really bad experiences, and people need to be held accountable. Like, it
And
just,
I was
wow.
15. So it's like I'm a kid and you think, okay, trust the doctors. They know what they're doing.
Mhm.
But this one was a little kooky.
Clearly, I mean, clearly he was, wow, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Because I've
Yeah.
had numerous surgeries, and I think it's interesting to note because I could easily be addicted, I should be,
Oh
because
yeah. Yeah.
between broken bones and babies and miscarriages and surgeries in the last 12 years, like, I have an endless supply, and I shouldn't say this, I'm discarding all of, but I have an endless supply of these pills that, like, if I were addicted, easy to go to. But
Mhm.
fortunately for me, I'm the type that I itch when I take them and I don't sleep. So I feel
Mm.
like it's like the speed thing, and I don't like how I feel, and I don't feel the pain goes away. So for me, they don't work. But for other
Mm.
people like you do feel that. And so people can easily get addicted. But addiction is not just prescription medication. Addiction is alcohol, right?
Mhm.
Addiction is pornography.
Oh, it
Addiction
comes in
is,
so many forms.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I
Some of
remember, oh, go
some of
ahead.
my yeah, some of my clients that I've helped, it's like literally social media, binge eating, yeah, like you were saying, porn, excessive spending.
Yeah.
It's really just I characterize addiction as it's a solution to a deeper problem. It's just a way that we self-soothe.
Yeah.
We think that it's a way that'll make us feel better, and it typically does in a very short term frame, but long term, it definitely plays a big role in holding us back for sure.
And many people, like the guy I was dating once, I said, "Hey, are you addicted to porn?" Because I was a victim of, and I wasn't even going to touch that type of situation.
Mhm.
And he's like, "Oh, no, no, no." And then we're dating for a while, and I find out, yeah, you are. He's like, "No." Because to them, they don't think they have a problem. But you're talking to 20 people online and having sex conversations while you're dating. Like, this is an issue.
Yeah. Yeah, that's
Um,
crossing a line for
yeah,
sure.
absolutely. But yet they didn't see that. They honestly didn't see it until they were confronted with it. And so I think that those are things that we have to be aware that, um, because you seem like a really great, innocent person that just nothing wrong. And yet you had this issue that you weren't aware of. And so I love how you said that breaking your back was a blessing because of your dad, right? And then overdosing on your 21st birthday was a blessing. Like, these are things that people could, like, go the other way. It's,
Yeah.
I kudos to you. And now you're turning this into something where you've touched over 1 million people, right?
Yeah.
You do.
Yeah.
So tell us what you do.
So I help people who were struggling just like I was. Like my whole goal is to condense time. I struggled to get sober. I struggled to keep that sobriety for a little while, and ultimately I found these hacks or just this new mindset, and I found a way that you don't have to struggle with sobriety. And when I say sobriety, it's like we were saying, it could be drugs, it could be alcohol, it could be anything. So realigning your actions to your goals and your values is what I help people do. And I created a program, I call it my climb program. It's the chronological order that I wish I had gone through to get sober. And now I had pieced all the puzzle pieces together and kind of made it into an easier process for other people to get sober, because I think that so many people struggle and they think that it's a lifelong thing, that you might have to go to meetings every week, or you're always going to be in therapy, or it's always going to be a struggle every day. You have to wake up and fight to be sober. And that's just not the case. And I don't want people to have to struggle. And so that's what I do. I help people, get their stuff back on track and realign with their goals and values and assess what actually makes sense for you, the individual.
So how do you help people who they're in your program and they relapse? Because it's easy to happen. I mean, when you have an addiction forever,
Oh,
that
yeah. Yeah. So I look at it as this, and this is something that I teach my clients, is everything is data or data, however you want to say it. It's data. So when you have a relapse or a trigger, because I say like, yeah, you can know how to deal with all of your addiction stuff, but that doesn't mean you're never going to have a craving. You're never going to have a trigger. Things are going to happen. Life happens. And relapses that's just part of it. So sometimes that will happen. And if you look at everything as data, what I teach in my program is, so the CLIMB method, it's clarity first. We have to know where we're at. Where do we want to go? That's getting rid of that denial. Like, what is the real problem here? And let's address it on a deeper level. Because like I said, addiction is always a solution to something deeper. So we get that clarity, then we get leverage. The universe gave me leverage through overdose. But I don't want you to have to wait that long. I don't want the universe to be forcing you with no alternative. So we kind of have to fabricate that leverage. We create some pain if we don't change and pleasure if we do change, because those are the only two reasons that people actually make a change. And that's where if we have a relapse, typically what happens is our leverage phase that was not built up strong enough. And so we have to go back and readdress in that phase of, okay, what was the trigger? What, get the clarity. What was that key moment that started those thoughts that, what environment were you in? What were you thinking? Who were you around? Like asking better questions and then going and diving into that leverage phase. But taking it at face value of this is just information and we get to learn from it and move on. I feel like that's the best way to handle a relapse, because otherwise you're just beating yourself up and you might go even farther into a binge, and it's just that shame and anger cycle, and it's just not helpful for anyone. So taking it just at face value, no judgment, it just is what it is, and let's learn from it and move forward. I think that's the best course of action.
I like that, because I've told people I'm addicted to sugar. And so like if I work out but once I have one, it's like, well, I already messed up,
Yeah.
I'm getting better. I'm getting a lot better. But there was a time where I'm like, forget it. And dealing with emotions and stuff. So again, I'm over that stage, but still it's a hard thing. And it's like, well, if I already screwed up, I might as well really enjoy myself.
Yeah.
I have to understand,
Yeah.
back
But
to
it's a thought that everybody has. It's like, same with working out. It's like, if you miss a day on your regimen, it's like, well, I won't work out tomorrow too, and whatever. And it just can pile on. And then you look back and it's like, whoa, where did the last 3 months go? So it's definitely, and I think having somebody in your corner and doing it with you empowers you to the point where you have that accountability, but also the guidance to like bring you outside of your head. Like there's that saying, like, get in your head, you're dead. Like if you have that shame and that guilt of, oh, I ate the sugar, or I didn't work out, or I spent too much money or something, whatever your vice is, but it's just you're going to think about it and think about it and think about it and just obsess over how you're messing up, quote unquote, messing up. And there's nobody there to like pull you out of that. And so I think that having somebody to help you get through it is really powerful too, for your progress and ultimately like long-term success.
I agree. I liken it to, I have kids, and some of them have these little temper tantrums, right? And so they start to get in this thing. And if you can like get them off of that thought for a minute and disrupt the pattern, then all of a sudden they're okay. I have a son, like, oh my gosh, what he does. And so all of a sudden, if I can get his mind off it, he really does. He comes out of it and I get him back, right? And I think that's the same with us. We have to kind of think of it is we get into this thing, and if someone can disrupt us, like you, a coach, or someone, then we can get out of that thought process and pattern and get back to it. And I think maybe that's why AA, they have the accountability. I don't know what they're really called, but
like a sponsor.
Yeah, sponsor. Thank you. So in your program, do you do it individually? Do you do it in groups? How does that work?
Yeah. So I've got both options depending on the individual. So those of you listening, like no matter what you need, a lot of people like that group aspect where they feel like there's a community, there's more people to rely on. And then other people want that as tight as it can be, privacy, they want exclusivity. And so we have both the group and the private option. And And then there's also self-paced, because sometimes you're just not ready to reach out and, ask for help, but there's still resources available.
Mhm.
So it's really catered to what that individual actually needs, because that's what this whole thing is about, right? It's like, how do I help you specifically?
I like that. So, people listening, because they're not going to think they have a problem. So, what are some of the things, like in my book that I wrote, it's talking about recognizing abuse, because you don't know until you start answering the yes or no questions, right? And so,
Mhm.
what are some signs that you have an addiction?
Yeah. Well, okay, that's a loaded question, because like you said, like everybody is so different, and we all have some level of denial, I think, when it comes to our habits.
Mhm.
So I think the best way to recognize is, if you have a problem, are you thinking about it often? Is it something that after you do it, do you feel bad? Like, do you feel physically bad or shame, or like, does it trigger emotions? Something that I realized, and this is how I realized I had a problem kind of before the actual overdose. Like, I wasn't totally in denial and then I overdosed, it was like kind of gradually moving in that direction, but realizing, am I avoiding a feeling and doing something else? So when it comes to addiction, it's, am I doing drugs so I don't have to feel this other thing? Am I, smoking a cigarette? Am I drinking? So I'm stressed from my day. Let me come home and let me just drink. Or maybe you're feeling anxiety, and so you just get on your phone and you scroll for hours, or TV, or whatever it is. If you're avoiding feeling something, that's typically when we've gone too far, and it can be a problem. And those two things put together, where you're avoiding feeling, but then after you do the action, you actually feel worse. I
Mhm.
think that's when it's kind of time to face the music, and kind of nip it in the bud, because like I said, I don't want you to wait until you overdose. I don't want you to wait until like you lose your job or you spend all your money or whatever the worst case scenario is for your vice. I don't want you to wait to get to that point. And so I think those two things put together is kind of when it's time to reach out.
I like that. I like that. Um, so looking ahead, what excites you about your future in the field that you're in and your personal journey?
Yeah, so many things. I am actually writing a book right now. I'm really excited about it. So this will be one of those self-paced resources that people will be able to grab. There's not a release date yet. It's still in the beginning phases, but I'm super excited about that, kind of getting to share my story a little bit more.
Mhm.
And then on top of it, just the success that my clients are getting, like the client program in and of itself is like, we're seeing amazing results. And now it's like there's enough time that have passed from my first couple clients, like official, where they have had sustained success for over a year now. And it's like, okay, so this is working long term.
Mhm.
And it's not just me, it's not a fluke. It's not like, how people say, like, if I can do it, you can do it.
Mhm.
Well, I agree. If I can do it, you can do it. But also, these other people are doing it based off of this program that I created. And so it's not as taboo, I think. Like, those of you listening, if you are struggling, or if you are curious on getting some kind of, clarity on, is this even a problem in the first place? Like, this is not just me getting success. This is a bunch of other people. And I'm really excited about that.
That's great. So what is your why? Like what keeps you going?
Okay, so I'm glad you asked that. So when I first started, it's really evolved over time. When I first started, it was, I needed to share my story about the abuse. It wasn't right. He shouldn't be able to get away with this, and I need to shout it from the rooftops. And as I started speaking, I realized, people would come up to me and say, like, wow, something similar happened to me, or this happened. And we all actually have very common threads.
Yeah.
And when I realized that I am not the only one with my story, mine is just a very small percentage of what actually happens, I then felt compelled to, okay, I need to speak up for those who can't. or who are afraid, or they don't want to, like they just don't want to share about it, but it needs to be talked about. And then as time went on even farther, I realized that when it comes to trauma and sexual abuse, a lot of times the natural sequence of things turns into addiction because, like I said, you guys, like if you're avoiding feeling something, it is very likely that you can turn to another vice that is not beneficial for you long term. So if you're trying to avoid feeling the pain from your past, you turn to addiction. And I realized like, okay, well, this is something I've overcome. I've helped people in my personal life, like that have just come up to me that I knew. And they're like, hey, how are you doing this? I helped them. And I realized, okay, this is what people need. They need tactical skills on how to get over the addiction. Like, I'm not a therapist. I can't help you with like all of the trauma and healing from that. But when it comes to the actual addictions at hand, that is where my skill set is. And I realized like, okay, this is something I need to do because people are struggling.
Yeah.
And ultimately the catalyst was someone in my family, like extended family. It was on my husband's side. He fatally overdosed from fentanyl. His prescription medication was cut with fentanyl. And I'm like, whoa, okay, let's back up, pump the brakes. This is happening to everyone across the board, like every single person. Those of you listening, I'm sure you know someone, if not you, someone in your network is struggling with addiction. And if it can touch that many lives, it's like, I can't just sit around knowing what I know about how to get over it. I can't just sit around not doing something. So that's my why.
Do you have a relationship with the person that abused you as a kid, or no?
No, I tried. I went through the whole forgiveness phase, and I did this exercise called effectively blaming. And a lot of people, you know, when bad people do bad things, or, you know, things happen, a lot of us hold on to that anger and you did this to me and this and this. But it wasn't until I went through this exercise and I realized, okay, so yes, that bad stuff happened, but what good came from that person?
Wow.
You know? And so it's like, okay, so for my specific example, my specific situation, growing up with the father I had, he gave me the perfect example of the man I shouldn't marry. And so now it's like, wow, thank you so much for being who you were, because now I have an amazing husband, an amazing marriage. And it's like, I wouldn't have had that maybe if I didn't have that crazy example of how I did not want to be treated. And, you know, so I went through and I blamed him for, you know, my education, my courage to speak, like all of these things. And I felt so much gratitude. And I called him and I'm like, hey, I just want to thank you. And I told him all this stuff and he just laughed at me. I'm like, all right. So I've done a lot of growing up. I've done a lot of work on myself. You're not ready, you know, and I kind of closed that door and I realized my life is just better without him. And so so he's not in my life at all. We don't talk at all. And I rarely, honestly, never really think about him in my day-to-day life. It's only when I'm talking about my past that it's like, yeah, he was just around and he's just a building block to get me here. And there's no hard feelings at all.
But see, that's the part that I commend you, because it's freeing, because he no longer has any type of control over you. And that's the part that I want the listeners to get to, is to realize that once you can forgive and let go, you're free. You don't have to have bondage, I guess is the word I use.
Yes.
Because they get up every morning and they don't think, oh, haha, I hurt her. They don't.
Yeah, no, forgiveness is for you. It's not for them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it takes a long journey. I know.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, this all started when I was 4 years old, you guys. Like it has been decades of work.
Well, last question. If you were sitting on a park bench talking to your 19-year-old self, what would advice, and not regret, because people interpret it, that's not but knowing what you know now, what would you say to that person?
It's crazy you asked this, because I had this crazy epiphany a couple months ago of like, wow, okay. So if that scenario was happening, and I was sitting on the bench talking to my 19-year-old self, I would tell her two things. A, I'm sorry that it hurts. I would just see her for what she's going through. And then after we're done crying, because I'm sure that would be happening, I would tell her, you're doing everything exactly right. As hard as it is, you're on the right path and you'll figure it out. Like everything that's happening is supposed to be happening. I had to go through all that craziness to be able to get myself here. So I think those two things, just helping her out, letting her feel seen, but to keep going.
That gives me goosebumps. That's amazing. Well, thank you for coming on. And let me just say, Unbreakable Moms, if you're struggling and you feel like maybe you are addicted to something and you're not quite sure what to do, or maybe you are having a hard time letting go, then please reach out to Nicole. How do they find you?
Yeah, there's so many ways now with social media and the internet. So my website will have a bunch of little goodies too. It's just NicolePoulton.com, or Instagram is the easiest way for a DM, just Nicole Poulton.
Okay. Well, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Moms, go out and make it a great day. Beautiful moms, remember, you are unbreakable. Keep illuminating the world with your strength, pursuing your dreams, and reveling in the splendor of motherhood. This is Charisse Walker, bidding you farewell for now. Stay tuned for more empowering conversations on the next episode of the Unbreakable Mompreneurs podcast. Until then, keep shining bright. Signing off with love, Charisse Walker.